Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of Q&A with Sharon's son, George. I was my mother, Sharon's caregiver when she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Unfortunately, she passed on 1/1/2020, but we started TogetherForSharon.com in her memory. Today, we have such an incredible guest, one that touches my heart and did the day I met her. She doesn't realize it. I probably told her 100 times, but just happened to be scrolling through social media. Sometimes social media is not the best, but at this moment it was just heart touching and heartfelt. And I just saw this amazing video that I think was professionally done by a movie theater, and it was actually Megan. So I want to welcome Megan, but it was her video, and it was a message to her children about Parkinson's. And I thought it was not only heartfelt, but such an important message. And second I saw that, I'm like, almost kind of begged you in a way to talk because I just found your journey so amazing and inspiring. And even today's discussion could be given someday, not just to my kids, but to yours. And, they'll never forget. So just want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I was so excited. I said it earlier, but I'm so glad because we planned so far ahead and things come up, surgeries, life, busy schedules, and people who are famous through the Brian Graham Foundation. I won't say who, but that one, I have to go that one. And hopefully, again, during the middle, we'll stop and kind of play some of your background, but maybe we can just get right into it. You could tell us, a little bit about yourself, and then we'll try to really bring everything we can to light today and share it with the world because that's what this is about.
Awesome. Thank you. So I am Megan Taye. I live in Portland, Oregon. I was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's in my mid 40s, and it's been a couple of years now, and I'm sort of learning how to navigate it while also trying to advocate.
I appreciate it. I try to talk a lot about the background of Parkinson's in the beginning, then we'll go more about Megan and you second half. But maybe you can talk because you actually touched on something. I mean, we might even likely be the same age, or even probably are, but maybe you could talk because the world is our Parkinson's community, and I hope I'm part of it because I went through a lot with it with my mother, but I don't feel I can rest till we have a cure. But a lot of individuals, the false misconceptions have always been Parkinson's disease is an elderly man disease, which is completely incorrect, inaccurate, and false. Maybe you could shed some light for those listening about young onset Parkinson's disease.
Yeah, so young onset Parkinson's disease is, sort of rare within the broader Parkinson's disease community, although it's actually not so rare and it is not so uncommon, and it is happening with more and more frequency, sadly, which is one of the main reasons that I do the advocacy that I do, is to educate people so that if they have any sort of symptoms, they're not discounting them thinking, well, I'm too young for Parkinson's, right? Which is what happens a lot with people and or their doctors when they go to see them. They go with these symptoms and they're told that it's something else because there's no way it could possibly be Parkinson's. And it can be, it is for so many of us, and it's happening more and more every day. You were asked me.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'm admire and really love is that maybe it's because I'm involved a lot with social media now, but I see so many individuals who are young. I can name them all, but I don't want to get it. We don't have time, and they really have an incredible presence. Like Mark Miller, Esther, Melissa Livingston, and so many others. Adam is a good friend.
Amber, yeah,
Amber,
Esther,
she's been on the
yeah.
show. She's incredible, but it's so to me, there's this young onset's not really rare, but to the world it is. So maybe you can just kind of touch maybe about the age range, and then we can get a little bit more into how it affects, family, life. I
Yeah.
have so many questions. I hope we have time for them all.
Yeah, so young onset Parkinson's disease at this point right now, and sometimes there's talks of it changing, but it is right now considered anyone who's 50 or younger at diagnosis. And oftentimes people have symptoms 10, 15, even 20 years before they're actually diagnosed. So many times these people being diagnosed in their 20s, 30s, and 40s have had these symptoms for a long time and probably could have been diagnosed sooner if there was more awareness about it. But it's unique in that we have the same symptoms as someone like an older person, but we're in different stages of life. You know, we are working. A lot of us are, I am still working full time. A lot of us are still working full time, parenting kids, young kids, teenagers, you know, the whole spectrum, and also starting to care for aging parents. So we are really in the thick of our lives, very, very busy. And when we get a diagnosis like this and we're told the best thing we can do is high intensity exercise, medication, diet, otherwise there's nothing else we can do. We have to fit all of that stuff in. And it's a lot. It's almost, it feels sometimes like a full-time job managing this disease. But I actually do have a full-time job and kids that I'm a full-time mom to, right? Like that doesn't stop. Obligations to family members, a husband that I'd like to see once in a while, you know, with our busy lives. And it's just kind of an interesting subset, I guess, of this population of people with Parkinson's.
And actually, we met again, as I mentioned, because I saw your incredible social media post, the video of you kind of sending a message to your children. Can you tell us about your advocacy and, more importantly, you know, your children? I'm writing a book now about a grandmother, which was my mom, you know, trying to explain Parkinson's to the grandkids, because I have three children. There were three of her grandkids, and even to this day, I'm still kind of baffled, you know, as to what happened and why and how and the progression, why it was so fast for her. But maybe you can touch on, I know there's a lot of questions, so we'll take it one by one. There's just too much to ask.
Yeah, so I have two children. I have a almost 24-year-old and a 10-year-old. So huge age gap there, and they were, this was a couple of years ago, so they were still, you know, early adulthood and young childhood. So it's sort of different, right? Age appropriate delivery of content with regard to a diagnosis like this. So I'm sort of careful in the way that I talk to each one of them about that, about this disease, but it's generally been a positive thing. We've talked about how exercise is important for me and how we can, with my little one who's here still at home, how we can do that together. And it's been a sort of lesson that I can teach them with regard to resiliency and positivity, and giving back, which is that this disease is awful. It's really hard. Some days are harder than others, and it's going to get worse. You know, the reality is this is a progressive disease. There's no cure. And so my kids do know that. My little one doesn't know the extent to which the progression could happen, or, you know, and when, and neither do I, frankly. But so we try to veer away from like the scarier stuff that could happen, but focusing more on what can we do to help, what can we do to help other people, focusing on the fact of the mobility that I do still have, the voice that I still have, and using that to help other people who no longer have mobility, who no longer have a voice, and translating that into sort of everyday life. You know, what can we do with the skills that we have or the gifts that we have to help other people? And it's been really an incredible, trust me, I wish I don't have Parkinson's, right? But it's been a gift in that it's been a way to connect with my children and teach my children with real life examples, things that are really important to me as a human being.
One thing that might be interesting is the different decades of ages, you know, because now you have to, maybe the younger one might kind of not even, may think it's almost normal, you know, so it might be, I don't know if it's easier, but you at least explain it. I've heard that from some other individuals who have young onset, but then the older one knows a little more, and so it could be more of a challenge, but maybe it's not, because they understand. So it's definitely interesting. I'm so grateful again that you are out there advocating and fighting. The one thing I think that is a problem too is people see you probably, and you know, again, I think you're an amazing person, beautiful and young and all this, you know, out there fighting. They don't see the behind the scenes. It's almost like with me, I didn't want to write a book or put it out there. And again, it's not about that, but I only shared it because I shared like the last year of her life journal because people didn't see that. And I took video and film, but I will never share it. I did it more like if the medical profession ever needs it, but I don't want her to be remembered for that. And that's what the cover was. It was our dance at my wedding, which was my 2 minutes that I'll never forget, where she was just, we were laughing and kind of talking, and Parkinson didn't exist or matter in those few minutes. So I imagine a lot of the memories that you're making now and the videos that I fell in love with that you put up are just fascinating and things that they can remember forever. So maybe we can also touch on, you mentioned family life, but what about, again, not to get too into the where you work and thing, but how does Parkinson so far been affecting you at work?
Thankfully, it has not. My mobility is pretty great. I have a desk job, so I'm lucky in the sense that I'm not.
Please make sure to stand up a lot and don't be like me.
Yeah, I've got a treadmill under my standing desk and things like that. I'm able to incorporate walks throughout the day and stuff. I've got a supportive um, management and team, and it hasn't been an issue, and I'm hoping that it will not be an issue. But it is important for people, I've got friends who work with their hands. I've got a friend who's an electrician with young onset Parkinson's disease, and those are much more difficult challenges. And so I feel really lucky and blessed that portion of my life is not affected, and I don't have to worry about it. That's one thing I've taken off my plate, worry-wise, which is amazing. But it is true, especially for young onset patients, when they're diagnosed in the middle of careers, it's scary, right? Like, you don't know when you're going to have to retire. You don't know when this progression is going to hit, how hard it's going to hit, what it's going to look like. Are you going to be able to work? How long are you going to be able to work? One of the things I think you and I've discussed before is the struggle that my husband and I have with regard to money. It's like, do you save every penny because you might need an early retirement? Or do you splurge on family vacations to make memories with your kids, right? Like when you're mobile. Do you kind of do both? It's just, and at the same time, you're preparing to send kids to college, right? So it's just so different to be in this stage of life and dealing with something that's progressive, but also so unknown. There's no neurologist, trust me, I've asked them all, can tell me when are things going to change for me? What are the changes going to look like? So it's really hard for someone like me, maybe a type A mom who plans everything out. Everything's planned well in advance. This is not something that you can really plan for.
Right.
And just living with that uncertainty is unsettling. But again, I feel lucky that it hasn't moved into my career. I'm very lucky about that, but it is a reality for a lot of people, and it may become a reality for me at some point about early retirement.
Is there any way someone can reach you and support you now? I mean, I know some of my favorite people online and fighting this young onset don't have websites and things, but maybe if I want to share it again a few times throughout our talk, but maybe you can tell everyone where they can find you. Can they donate? I mean, I always wanted, no offense to these big organizations, but my dream was to start Together for Sharon in memory of my mother, but we have a little slot even for people with Parkinson's where they can showcase, their own talents like art, or maybe they left their career because of PD, but now like they can go to Together for Sharon and find people with Parkinson's and directly contact them. I have nothing to, I'm like a conduit, I think. I don't want anything from it. I just want them to be able to help you. I don't feel anyone in the US should, or around the world, should ever have to pay for one dime towards medication, but you should have as much medication unlimited as possible. Hopefully the national plan might help with that, but maybe you can share with us if anyone can reach out, donate, or even just how to support you.
With regard to donations, I mean, I work closely with the Brian Grant Foundation, which is a foundation here in Oregon that focuses on, there's other foundations out there that focus on a cure, which is excellent. And I love for people to donate there as well. Michael J. Fox is one that I work with as well. But Brian Grant Foundation focuses more on helping people live well with Parkinson's, and using the money that they are, that they're receiving donations to help people with Parkinson's with exercise programs, with creative writing workshops, with young onset groups, which are amazing. And that's something that I hope everybody can experience. I know it doesn't exist everywhere, but I'm very lucky that I have that, because that connection with other people my age with my diagnosis has been key. But I can be reached I'm on Instagram. I haven't moved over to TikTok yet. Maybe I will someday.
You have to hurry before it's shut down. I guess.
Yeah, I know, right? I've never been big on social media, and so it was quite the leap for me to do this. But I wanted to be able to reach people, and I have been able to reach people, which is great. And it's at YOPD.love.letters. So YOPD love letters on Instagram.
Yeah, that's what got my attention with the love letters, because I never saw, there's nothing, I try, my thing is, as a researcher, I like to find unique individuals, and there's honestly, and I always say everybody that email me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen anyone else do like the type of work or advocacy you've done. The love letters, I love it. I love the love letters. I should have a shirt after we're done.
Thank you.
They go send it anything, all donations will go right to you. Well, one area I do want to touch on while you're speaking about this, maybe I'll try to share it and then we'll play it. But how did you we have so many organizations and foundations and things, just I can sit here so many hours talk about them, and they're all great. But like you said, they all offer something different. How did you come in contact? I was lucky enough to speak to Katrina and interview her once for an interview online on Together for Sharon, but maybe you can discuss, even I was a big Brian Grant fan. I'm a basketball player myself, but I'd love to meet him or talk someday. It's very difficult to reach, but maybe you could touch on the Brian Grant Foundation, but not just on them, how you, made that connection, as I share a beautiful video that we'll play right after.
Yeah, so I went to one of their events, and then shortly thereafter, they started the young onset group for people in our age demographic, and just made some great connections there. I am on their committee advisory board now, and was lucky enough to be able to be involved in their annual gala, the biggest fundraiser of the year. And it's just an excellent organization. I knew about Brian Grant and his diagnosis because, like you, I'm a basketball fan, and Brian played here in Portland for several years. He was like a well-loved player, and I knew about his foundation. And so when I was diagnosed, I looked that foundation up immediately. So I'm so lucky to live in Portland and be close to them, although they do provide opportunities for people outside of Portland as well. They offer a ton of virtual classes and things like that. But that was how. Go ahead.
They have an office in Miami where I am, but they don't really have. I kept saying, please have a gala here. Maybe some. I don't think they have, but that would be amazing. They don't seem to have many physical events in Florida. I wish they would, but I appreciate you sharing that. And so now I'm gonna just put a thumbs up if you hear this. We're gonna play a beautiful. Well, it's your story, so let's try that for a moment, see how it goes.
I really didn't want to define myself or be defined as a person with young onset Parkinson's disease. I just wanted to be me.
These are my two children. This is an old photo. This is Makari.
I was hesitant to share my diagnosis with people. I found it difficult to find sort of my people until I connected with the Brian Grant Foundation. I looked at the Brian Grant Foundation's website and saw that they were having community events. And I thought, thought I would try one to see if I could connect with some younger people that had the same diagnosis. And so I think the first event I went to was a walk in East Portland, and I immediately met a young person there, and we paired off right away and just started talking and walking. It was so nice to be able to see someone who had been diagnosed a few years before I had and was thriving. Meeting people at the Brian Grant Foundation events has made me feel more positive about my diagnosis, realizing that I can do this and I can do it and live well. It was so nice to be able to talk to people about anything, and all of us understood why the others were tremoring or squirming in their seats or needing to get up and stretch, and nobody was looking at each other weird. And it was just a really great feeling of community, and it's continued to grow.
Like me, 10 to 20% of Parkinson's patients are diagnosed younger than the typical 65 and older demographic.
Now I do whatever I can to teach people about Parkinson's. I still have great mobility. I still have a voice. I have energy, have the ability to speak at events. I also started an Instagram page that's dedicated to young onset education. I have been able to reach people all over the world who message me, ask me questions. They thank me for highlighting something that they're dealing with that they can share with other people. In general, it's been the most positive experience for me. What I hope my kids learn from my advocacy work is that you can be challenged with something like a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease and let it destroy you, or you can have it be a positive thing in your life and find a way to help other people.
Well, let me thank you again for that, because it was beautiful. And everyone can actually locate it if you go to YouTube and look up 2024 and you'll see Megan's story, or just go to the Brian Grant Foundation. I actually subscribed. I also want to thank you for doing our little interview. And it's amazing how time flies, because I was looking and this was all the way, 2023. I mean, we've been friends for a while, so it's amazing. And there's your beautiful son. And so you can visit TogetherForSharon.com and also see more about and hear and see how to reach out to Megan. Just want to stop that part. But that was beautiful, and I appreciate it again all you do. I love the part, as always, I'm biased, but about the Instagram, because we wouldn't have met if it, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Social media, unfortunately, I wrote an article recently about the dark side, but there's the good side always outweighs, the one or two dark side, which is also a different part.
Great.
But I wanted to thank you. So now at this point, we're halfway through, and I want to try to turn a little away from Parkinson's, even though it's always with us, unfortunately. But maybe you could tell us, this is where we get into I always joke with, my wife says it's the Oprah moment, Oprah Winfrey, but no crying aloud. Can you list 3 words that describe who you are?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Number one.
Mom. I mean, I know that mom is a bunch of different things, but that's number one, mom, on all the things that go with that. I would say resilient and hopeful.
Excellent, thanks. And then this is a different question, but I think you mentioned a little bit. How did you learn you had Parkinson's, or what were some of the first signs? That's the number one question I get about my mother, and I'm sure you've seen the Michael J. Fox movie on Apple TV a year or two ago, where he, he just it was his finger. But maybe you could share a little bit if you'd like. You don't have to answer any questions you don't want.
No, yeah, I'm happy to share. So actually, my tremor was the first symptom that I noticed in my thumb, and it started when I was doing chemotherapy, actually for breast cancer, which I was being treated for. And they said, the doctors all said, this is, a side effect from the toxins in the chemo, and it'll go away when you're done with chemo. Well, fast forward a year, I'm done with chemo, the tremor remains. So I went to a neurologist, who I ended up seeing every 6 months to check up on it. And I was diagnosed actually with a benign essential tremor, and which is, as it sounds, a benign issue that can be treated. It's just, you'll have the tremor and it can bother some, and there's medication you can take for it. The medication didn't work, and I kept seeing them and everything was fine. It didn't really bother me. It bothered my husband more than it bothered me, you know, just seeing it kind of freaked him out. But it wasn't until I noticed that we were at the beach on a particular weekend, and I couldn't sort of open my toes, you know, to put your flip flop on one side. I just could not do it. And I also couldn't smell something that everyone else could smell on the beach. And my husband thought maybe I'd had a stroke, you know, with those symptoms. So we went to the doctor, decided it wasn't a stroke, but they sent me back to my neurologist. And she took a look at me and realized that I had more tremor than she realized. I've been meeting with her virtually and only seeing my hands, but actually my whole side was doing a tremor that I didn't recognize as a tremor. I thought it was sort of that I'd been sitting in a weird seat since COVID, working from home, you know. It just didn't, because again, Parkinson's would never have been on my mind. It doesn't run in my family, you know, I'm too young, whatever. But finally, they started looking at Parkinson's being a possibility, and I got a DAT scan, which didn't prove, but showed what they were thinking was just that it was Parkinson's. And I finally got to see a movement disorder specialist, which is a neurologist that specializes in diseases like this. And they confirmed it within, you know, about 30 seconds of watching me move. So
I think we have to add brave, hero, and role model. So 3 more. So now we have 6 things to describe, because someone's doing this, and I hope everyone's sharing it or listening, and they're like, wait a minute, I had, you know, something similar, or, you know, they're just incredible, and I appreciate all that you do, even though I wish you didn't have to, but I'm really grateful for all you do. Is there one moment or one most memorable moment that stand out through, I know it's kind of new, but all your advocacy so far? Is there, you know, one specific, I think I would know it, but what do you think? You tell me, you probably have a better answer than me.
yeah, I mean, there are a lot actually for me. So it's hard for me to focus on just one, but there is one moment that I had that actually sort of sparked my fire to do this, which was a person I met at a birthday party. And he was sort of sitting on the couch all by himself. I heard that he'd been recently diagnosed with Parkinson's, and I took the opportunity while he was by himself to go up and talk to him, and ask him if he was okay, if he needed anything. And then I told him that I had Parkinson's too, which was out of my comfort. That's not my norm to go talk to people, nor is it normal for me to share my medical issues, right? But something was pulling at me to talk to him. And he was shocked to learn that I had Parkinson's, and actually really sad, because he was just thinking, you're too old. I don't, you know, and I don't want you to have to go through what I'm going through. We started talking, I started asking if he'd seen specialists, and it was just so hard for him to speak. But I stopped asking him questions because it was so hard for him to, I could tell he knew exactly what he wanted to say, but he couldn't get his body to form the words. At one point during our exchange, when he looked upset, I asked him if I could give him a hug, and he said yes. Also very, very much out of my normal comfort zone. But again, I was pulled, I felt a connection to him. As I was hugging him, and he was really weeping, before he pulled away from our hug, I said, I'm going to do everything I can to try to help people like us. And he said, you better not stop. And sorry, now I'm going to get emotional. I said I wouldn't, but
It's not the first So we've had
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
But
that's my fault.
it was that moment where I realized, okay, he can't do any advocacy right now. He can barely form words. I mean, his brain was just fine. He knew exactly what was going on. He knew he was sharp, but because of the progressive nature of the disease, you know, at some point, all of us, our voices are either becoming so low that nobody can hear us, but also the ability to form the words, you know, with the muscles that are needed to do that, can become impossible at some point. And he also needed 100% help with his mobility. I mean, he wasn't going anywhere on his own. And I'm thinking, here I am, perfectly healthy, running around all the time with my kids, and able to speak loudly. I need to do this now, you know, and I need to do it not only for me and for my family to get this word out to hopefully get a cure, but for everyone else that can't do it right now, because that's going to be me one day. And, you know, I'll regret not having done this.
I appreciate it.
That was important. That was a really, really important moment for me.
I appreciate you sharing that. I actually have someone on Facebook I became almost family with named Bill Willard. He can't come on the show because, like you mentioned, he can still function, but he can't speak well. But I want to shout out to Bill. So because you made me think of that. The other thing is one beautiful part of the video we watched, your video, and what you just shared your story is really the in-person touch. And COVID, unfortunately, kind of brought people like us together, which is incredible. And now we're virtual, which we wouldn't be able to do. I can't get to Portland right now. I'm sure you
Yeah.
can't. I want to come to Florida, but I don't know. But but being there, you know, hugging someone, we do a lot of the walks, and we have a little table. Just we don't, you know, we just want to be there to support people. And I've had people like kind of worried to come up to me because they think we're selling something, and then they realize because we're in the middle of all the pharmaceutical companies. But then when they realize we're just there to support, they come up, they cry, we hug, and like you had that moment you had, I feel the same. So it's almost like incredible how you share that story. It really touched me, and I know it will everybody listening. So remember, everyone, please share this. Please visit the Brian Grant Foundation. Please support Megan and everything she does, and share this, because the only way I think, that's my big time belief, that we're going to end this disease is by the work that Megan is doing out there. So thank you again for that. Let me just have a few more. Like I said, there's so many. This is a good one, but I know, again, also maybe you could talk a little bit about the love poems and stories. I don't know if you've done some lately, or are you going to keep, I mean, you should have a whole website just for the poems and stories, but when should we all expect it? I've been waiting for the next poem or story.
Yeah, I'm working on one right now. They're difficult for me for a couple of reasons. One is just lack of time, to be honest, and the other is they really take me down emotionally, and they can sometimes take me down a really dark path in my brain with regard to worrying about my kids and what they're going to experience with this. I don't care about me. I can handle whatever is coming. It's my kids. And so a lot of times when I do these, you know, I think you and I spoke before about the reason this is called love letters is because I created these originally as sort of digital love letters for my kids to show them one day when maybe I'm not mobile and I can't speak, to remind them of all the things we did together, and to show them how much I tried to stay healthy for them as long as possible, right? But then I got reactions from them from other people that I showed, and they thought, really, you should share these with other people, because they were getting an emotional response for people that was getting their attention. And my goal is never to be corny or dramatic or anything like that, but the reality is this disease is dark. You know, it's what it does to families is dark, and it's ugly, and it's sad. And sometimes we need people to tap into those emotions to become invested, and to want to care about those things. So I was reluctant to share them. Like you said, there's, you know, dark sides of social media as well, and I never want to invite people to criticized me or my family or anything like that. And I'm happy to say that has not happened, but I found it important to do that. It's hard on me. It's hard on my kids sometimes to see them. It makes them sad. And time, I think those are all the reasons that I'm sort of behind on those things. Also, what people don't maybe see with regard to advocacy is that I'm doing it, a lot behind the scenes. So I do a lot of, for the Michael J. Fox Foundation, I do a lot of emailing to leaders in my state. I do a lot of meetings with those leaders. I worked a lot on the bill that you previously talked about, meeting with representatives and senators for the past couple of years. Sometimes it felt like every week I was talking with somebody, but sometimes they're busier than others, which keeps me from creating the reels for Instagram. But I'm hoping to get one out soon because I like doing them as well. I mean, they can take a lot out of me, but I love to share them, and I always get amazing feedback. People sending me messages saying things like, I didn't know this about this disease. I have some of these symptoms. I'm going to go get them checked out. How can I, my favorite message that I get is in any iteration of someone saying, how do I become an advocate?
Yeah.
I love when people ask me that question because there's so much someone can do, from letter writing. It doesn't have to be something major like putting yourself out there on social media or speaking in front of huge crowds, right? It can be the little things. It's contacting your Congress people. It's wearing a T-shirt about Parkinson's in public and inviting people to ask you questions about it and being open enough to tell them something about it. It can be, advocacy runs the gamut of there's just so many different ways to do it. And if nothing else, I'm happy that I put that Instagram together just for those questions that I can help answer.
Thanks. One important question before we conclude today, and this, again, I always say this is not really the end, because I think we need to continue these types of conversations. We need to share them until we find a cure. So I know you won't, and I won't stop. I always say, we're side by side right now, and we will continue to be till we find a cure. I many nights, my wife's like, what's wrong? And I don't sleep. Now it's because of my back, but most of the time it is because I think of individuals who I consider family, like you and all those others out there who are struggling. And I know what my mother went through, and unfortunately she was my best friend, still is, but I used to call her 10 times a day. I always say I need that shirt that says I'm proud to be a mama's boy. But Parkinson took her from me, so that's why I don't want anyone to ever have that again. But who helps you during times of struggle? I was a caregiver, as you know. What tips can you give those who are listening to caregivers?
So I have an amazing support system. I've got my husband, my kids, my best friend, my Parkinson's community, which I didn't ever realize I would rely on so much, and I really do. Being with them brings me back to life sometimes. I know we've talked about before, this disease can cause apathy, but every time I'm with that group, I feel re-energized to keep going, not just for advocacy purposes, but my own health, and keep that going. And I have amazing parents, a sister, a great extended family as well. My best tip for a caregiver is to find a support group, and because you're going through something unique, and a lot of times caregivers have things that they want to discuss that they would never want to discuss with their loved one, right? About their fatigue, their burnout, their fear, things that they don't necessarily want to burden somebody with. But if you are with a group of people who are in the same situation that you are, it can be a lifesaver. It really can.
Thank you. And the final question is, for now, this to be continued. If you could leave and you've actually answered this on the interview before, but if you could leave the Parkinson's community today with some words of encouragement, what would they be?
Let's see. Keep going. I get tired too. The fatigue is real, but I can say that I've seen advocacy work. I've seen it in action, most recently at the gala that I've discussed. After I spoke, a lot of donors came up to me and told me that they didn't realize how much this disease was affecting younger people, how much it hit home to them because it could happen to them. You know, I think a lot of people, when something happens that they actually think could happen to them, it becomes more relatable, it becomes more serious. And I had donors actually come up to me and say that they ended up donating more money or pledging more on things after I spoke because they really wanted to help people in the young onset community. So that was so encouraging to me to see that, like, okay, this is actually working. You know, having that bill be passed, and that was due to a lot of things, but a lot of it was all the advocacy work that went into it. You know, there was hundreds, thousands probably of people like me that were talking to senators and representatives and all the work that you did too, which was amazing. It is actually working. It works. And so I would say stay hopeful, stay positive, and keep going with advocacy, with your own health, whatever. But it is making a difference, and I think it's working, and hopefully we'll see more change as the days and months go by.
I agree, and I think everyone who did help with helping the national plan pass has to still continue to kind of reach out to their representatives and make sure that they implement it, because that's just a whole different world. As an attorney and you know, working in public administration and politics and government, you can know it's the wheels of the, you know, whatever you want to call it, but the giant, imagine a giant clock and the little wheels, they go slow in government, and we can speed them up like we do with the plan if everyone is involved and shares this and helps support Megan and the foundation. So I really appreciate you, your time, love your family, and all that you've shared with the world. Is there any final areas that I didn't touch on that you might want to share?
I think you've got everything. I just want to say thanks to you and to your family for everything that you're doing. It's incredible. I've never met anyone like you. I don't know how. You know, I remember asking you one time, when do you sleep? I feel like you do so much. Like, where do you find the time? And you said, I actually don't sleep. And I thought, oh wow,
Yeah.
okay, that's how it's done. But your dedication to this, and I know it's so personal to you, but it is incredible, and it's so noteworthy. And I hope that you're getting recognition far and wide. You know, I know I tell everybody that I can about you and what you're doing, and send people to your site because it's just really, really important. So just from the bottom of my heart, just thank you.
No, I appreciate it, and I really love that we had finally, after almost a year, we've had the chance to speak, because interviews online are great, but you don't really get to know the person. And I feel like we didn't just click, but I feel like I know you for 100 years, and this
Yeah.
is so amazing. I mean, we already went way over, but I could probably again keep going for another 10 hours, but no one will listen after the first 4. But I do have a little message for you and everyone listening that I always say, this is for you and your family. We love you, we support you, we care about you, and you're never alone. I, alongside with Megan, will advocate for you, and together our voices are so much stronger. And I always, you know, it's a little funny, but I always say I'm just getting started, because even though I've been doing it for 4 years, I feel that every time I see a love, you know, post from you, or the work you do, kind of re-energizes me. No matter what I'm going through, it makes me want to keep fighting, and just want to thank you for that, because I wouldn't do this if it wasn't for credible people like you out there. And you know, like I said, there could be one kind of kooky person out there, but then you have the millions that are so inspiring that, you know, just keep me going. So thanks for all you
Yeah.
do, and never stop, and know that you're not alone, because I'll always be just a text or a call or a webinar away. So thank you again for your time.
Right back at you. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, thanks everyone again for joining us today on another episode of Q&A with Sharon's son, George. Please stay tuned, because again, there's so much more work to be done. We might have just passed the national plan to end Parkinson's. I wanted to jump for joy, like I said, but I couldn't because of third back surgery. But this, you know, we just, until we find a cure, that's not enough for me. So I'll be selfish for everyone until we find a cure for Parkinson's disease. the plan is great, but it's not enough yet. So we need to continue to contact legislators, representatives, get out there yourself. You don't even need us, keep fighting and go to a local event. If you're in Portland, go to the Brian Graham Foundation event. I hope someday I get to see you in person, get a hug and also a picture and thank you. Maybe Arizona 2026, you never know, at the
Yeah.
World Parkinson Congress. And hopefully it's hard for me to travel, but I really do want to try to get there. I probably couldn't make it out of the country, but to have, unfortunately, I missed you when it was in Portland. That would have been amazing. But as you can see, I want those events and all these and the podcasts that come to an end when we find a cure. So thank you, Megan. Thanks everyone listening. And again, we send our love and support. Please stay tuned. And there's just, again, so much more to come. Thank you all.